because some of the images that I have in my memory, and then that are then played out over time, it's just this intensity, right? This intense Bri Scurry, and I loved it because I'm an intense person. When I was an athlete, I was like, let's go, you know? And
Right.
I love it because I had these images of players like yourself just going for it, women, black women, going for it unabashedly. And then reading the book, I got this other calming sense that also you brought to your athleticism, and I think that's important as well, because it took me some time to like rein all of that in, you know, and it's still a work in progress, but I loved being able to read that. I mean, I do want to honor also that you talked about grief in the book, and I think you also, I think you say it so beautifully that I would say, fortunately, those who haven't experienced the loss of a parent, you don't really know until you know, and that awareness also changes how you deal with people reacting in grief. And so I thought that was a really, or at least that's what I took out of that particular moment. But you also, as you mentioned, talk about that self-sabotage and being able to forgive yourself. Like, wow, what a lesson, and what an important thing that then propelled you forward. Now, I would say it's a spoiler, but I mean, again, there's some of your timeline that has been documented, and I think the title, you know, My Greatest Save, it should be intuitive, I think, for people who know your story in passing. But I do want to ask, since we're here and I have you not in the flesh, but it virtually. When you think about that title and you think about your story and parts of your story that you're sharing now, you know, what resonated with you on landing on that title, My Greatest Save?
Yes, and obviously, like you said, the connotation is, you know, on the pitch. As a goalkeeper, you know, saving all day, every day, right? And of course, the biggest one for a lot of people was my PK save in the '99 World Cup. But for me, actually, the greatest save I ever made on the pitch is a save in the first 10 minutes against Brazil in the 2004 Olympic final. Cristiano just ripped one, and I don't remember actually seeing it. And I saved it with literally like fingertips. And it was a screamer, and that was actually 2 months after my dad had passed, and I really felt his presence in the goal with me, and I always had felt him, but in a way that was so profound. And like you said, with regards to grief, I want to circle back a bit on that. Being in the room when he passed away, the odds of that were practically zero, because I was traveling so much, and we just so happened to be in Minnesota at that time when he was struggling in the hospital, and so the fact that I was even there to be there with him and my mom was literally a miracle. And so I wanted to make sure I did honor and justice to that time. And so I would say my biggest save off the pitch would be, you know, myself, basically. I think, like you said, a lot of people can probably surmise that title doesn't mean the obvious, and it's a curiosity about what my greatest save is. And for people who have followed me, they would maybe think that it was me. In the time that I was going through my concussion situation, literally 3 years in purgatory, it was an odyssey for me, and unfortunately, for a lot of people, they never come out of it. So I actually was very fortunate in that regard, but I was suicidal for a good part of 2013, where all my concussion symptoms were just raging, and including the emotional ones of depression and panic attacks and anxiety, and I was in a hole, and I was so far away from that woman who's made that penalty kick save that there were times that I didn't even recognize myself anymore. And having a head injury, you know, for a lot of people, it's hard to understand what that feels like. It's literally a disconnect from who you were before, and it's hard to even reconcile that, and it affects everything you do. And I'm grateful that I was 38 years old and not 18 when I had that happen to me, because I did have a fantastic career up until that point. So I'm grateful in that regard, but it was just such an odyssey. And I've had concussions before, and I knew that one was different, though. And so my greatest save was literally myself. I remember, you know, when I started contemplating suicide and how I would do it, that's when I knew I was in real trouble. And I was thinking about it, and in my mind popped this amazing thought of, well, somebody's going to have to tell my mom that her baby was gone. And the thought of that, literally somebody knocking on the door, informing her, and her sitting on her bed as she had Alzheimer's pretty badly at that point, and somebody telling her that her baby was gone, it was just more than I could even deal with. It literally kept me from committing suicide. And the good news is, after that, I was like, okay, well, I'm not doing this, so how do I survive my life right now? And it was just, what can I control? And I can control myself. I can go for a walk every day. And so that walk was what kept me going. And then after that, shortly after that, is when I had the lifeline extended to me in the form of my now wife, Krissa, and my previous partner, Naomi Gonzalez, who had talked to Krissa about my odyssey with the insurance company and getting this experimental procedure done and putting some heat on that insurance company to do the right thing and pay for it. And sure enough, she did. And here we are today. And literally in the depths of hell is where I found my salvation, honestly. And it's truly an amazing, odyssey. And that's my greatest save.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that in the book. Thank you for sharing that just now. I would venture to guess that, myself included, a lot of people will find threads of that they can relate to.
Yeah.
Life is hard, and it's gonna knock you down. And I think finding first your feet in that. But then also finding your feet long enough and steadying yourself long enough to know that help is needed at times. Right. I think it's definitely something that I took away from reading your story. And there's courage in that. I think, again, going from that intense athlete, sometimes we're expected to just shoulder so much.
Yes.
Right, and especially when you get to a level that you had played at and that you still live in for a lot of people, right? You're expected to shoulder so much, but I think that there's power also in reaching out and reaching beyond yourself.
Right.
So I love that, and I thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And and so that leads us to present, where, again, we have this book, we have a documentary coming out. You've been able to circle back and be involved in the Women's Soccer League. I've got hockey on the mind still. In the Women's Soccer League, and be able to see that continue to push through. And you mention it in the book because of the timing of when you were writing it with Wayne, some of the struggles and some of the things that really this crop of players has fought for, and also has survived and endured. Mm-hmm. And so, but coming on the back end of that, especially for the national team, is a new collective bargaining agreement that many thought we would never see, with the likes of the men's and women's teams being conjoined in that effort. But then also in the professional league, a proper collective bargaining agreement as well. And so you've been on the outside looking in for a little bit now, but as someone who was a part of those foundational elements for soccer in the United States, I'd love to get your thoughts on where the sport is at the national level for the United States and domestically in the Pro League.
Well, let's start with that equal pay agreement. First of all, what an odyssey that's been. 30 years plus battling the Federation for massage therapists, for childcare, for proper hotels and traveling, and that's all the things that we fought for bonus money, for silver and bronze medals and whatnot. And now, current day, recently, filing a lawsuit and taking a new step and putting themselves out there by doing that, the 28 of them that did that. And then the pivotal moment, in my opinion, is Cindy Parlow-Cone becoming president. I mean, we don't have an agreement, I don't think, without her. She becomes president, and that's when they had the settlement for the lawsuit for the $24 million. And then the next step was the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, and they were able to get that done. And I actually talked to Cindy Parlow, recently at the White House Equal Pay Summit, and she was in the middle, literally in the midst of the negotiations, trying to get all the parties on the same page. And she was so, she was the right person for it. I mean, she was a warrior when she played, getting the header at the moment you needed it most, or making the slide tackle, and just having a knack and a presence on the pitch. And she has the same presence off of it too. And just seeing her talking about this, and then a few weeks later doing it, and with the teams. And I know a lot of people understand that the men's team had to make some sacrifices and whatnot for the women's team to be able to have equity, and it is a partnership. It's never been just about the women's team getting equality. It's been more about people getting on board and understanding what was needed to be done, and that's exactly what they did. And so when Cindy Parlow-Cone came to the table with this idea, she really made it happen. And so I really give her all the credit in the world for that, and for bringing the men and the women together. And credit to the men for being willing to make that compromise. And so that's the highest level, right? That's the national team level. But in terms of how this is right now for the NWSL, it's absolutely amazing. And they have come a long way. They're starting to get things done. They have a CBA of their own now. And obviously last year, the league was really struggling with a lot of the coaches doing some difficult things and some things they shouldn't have been doing, and there was a real cleansing, or as Rapinoe stated it, burn it all down basically, and get the brush, get the rough brush out of there, right? So, and that's exactly what they did, and now they're moving forward in their 10th season, and there's a lot of great talent on that team, and it's going to be really exciting to see.
Yeah, it's so exciting. It's also, here we go with this through line of timing. Again, I think when you look at so many people focused on women's sports now, just the organic growth and the respect, quite honestly, yes. And the infusion that we've always known existed, but it's just elevated on a whole new level as far as culture, social justice, but also just kind of like pop culture. We got game day fits and all yes. of it happening in women's sports, and there's just this gravitational pull. And I think it's always been there, but again, it's just on a whole nother level. And you now overlap that with the 50th anniversary of Title
yes.
IX that you talk about in the book. Just again, you're like, hey, I got the timing. What do I know? All we need to do is, we can put a lotto ticket down on Bri Scurry and when she's got things happening. But when you think about Title IX and all of these things that are coming to fruition in your sport of soccer or football, what makes you excited about the future and the next 50 years of what will be done to create not just equality but equity in sports?
Yeah, our women's team getting the equal pay situation under wraps and done is really a monumental occasion. I think it's going to have reverberations throughout not only the United States for women here in business and in different areas of their lives, especially in business in particular, and in other sports. Also, other women's teams in other countries are really going to be able to point to something and say, hey, maybe we can do that too. Canada right now is actually, knocking on the door, asking questions. So that's going to be something that potentially changes the way the sports landscape looks for the high-level national teams. Also, we have a great example now with the current league, the NWSL. Like I said, in this 10th season, it's the first league to ever make it that long. The 3.5 years, I think, was the record before for the other two leagues, and now we have this great example. We have to do a little bit better with the pay, obviously, for these women to be able to survive and to have make a living playing sport, because they basically dedicate themselves to it. Title IX has done so much for all of us. I think it's the wellspring. Like, if you go back in time, and that's when it really started to happen, because it provided, a level playing field, or at least the initiation of getting to that mandate of it being even, and that provided money for people like me to go play a sport in college. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to without it. And so it's I'm not the only one, so it's been really pivotal. But I think the landscape now has the opportunity to really grow for women's sports, for women in general. Once again, we did it in '99. I think we had that game, and we did an amazing job in that tournament. And because of the crowds we drew, and the excitement around the event. A lot of different things sprung from that. I mean, Nike, for example, didn't have soccer at all right before that, and they entered soccer through the federation. And now they are, $1 billion plus a quarter in soccer all over the world, and they started with the women's national team. I was one of the original 5 Nike girls in soccer. They didn't even have stuff back then. So all these things can occur, and it'll be a couple of years, maybe a decade before we really see what the platform now will grow from. But I'm really excited. I mean, there's always going to be work to do, as you know, as someone who's a minority and has, you have to fight. Unfortunately, you have to fight and scrap for it, and you have to fight and scrap to keep it. And there's a few areas in the country right now where I feel like we're going backwards a little bit. Roe v. Wade is one of them. Just equality and patience and understanding of trans people. I mean, we're going the wrong way with these laws against these young kids, and I just don't understand it. But we've got some work to do, and I, for one, will keep talking about stuff, and I know you will have people on that talk about it too, and you will continue to do that as well. And there's a lot of work to do still, but there's a lot to look forward to and to be excited about.
I love that. Well, Briana Scurry, thank you so much for joining us on Black Rosie Media. As you mentioned, yes, we are definitely going to keep an eye on all of those things because we love a good more is more story, and we know that we have to work a little bit more for more is more to be more for us.
Just exactly like that. I love it.
Well, I'll leave you with the last word. Anything else that you want listeners and readers to know about My Greatest Save and The Only coming out on Paramount Plus?
Yes, I mean, I wrote the book because I really had a story to tell, and the purpose of my life has always been to create and inspire. So I created this book to hopefully inspire all those that read it to understand that you can overcome all sorts of obstacles. Things that you deem that are in your way can actually be a springboard for something new and more exciting than you imagine. And I'm one of those great examples of that. I've had, obviously, a lot of things happen in my life, and it's a life well lived, I think. And because of those things that were difficult to get through and I got through them, I think that makes me more understanding as a person. It makes me more empathetic, and I think my book will help people be more of the same, and you'll see some of yourself in there. I understand how to get into areas of people's lives that maybe are private and they don't want to talk about it, but I think you'll see that I understand with my story, and I hope everybody enjoys it. And with regards to the documentary, it's going to be a doozy. I can't wait. I can't wait to see it. Like you said, July 12th on CBS Paramount Plus, but I'm really excited and very proud of it, and I appreciate CBS for taking a chance on me.
Well, we appreciate you spending some time with us, and just thank you. Thank you for everything that you've been able to do, and truly for sharing your story. We wish you the best, and may the Creator, may she be with you at all times.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thanks.